Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Verosika, Loona and Stella. Part 1. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time let's get into the video. Annoyed would be a good word to describe the mood of a certain blonde knucklehead as he trudged along the shores of a beach near a port town in the land of fire. Frustrated would be another word that works. But the best phrase to use would be fucking pissed off. And why is Naruto feeling this way? The short answer is his supposed master, Jiraiya the Toad Sage. Though, super pervert would also be a title the man would accept fully with pride. The longer answer is this. Naruto was taken from his home, the Hidden Leaf Village, by Jiraiya for a training trip that was meant to span about 3 years before the duo returned. It was supposed to be spent helping the young man grow as a ninja so that he could be better prepared for the Akatsuki, a group of ninja who abandoned their villages and formed a terrorist mercenary organization with their primary goal being the removal of the Bijuu from their Jinchuriki. This was especially daunting for Naruto because he was a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the strongest of the Bijuu. One would think that a man as well informed as Jiraiya, who is known for being a spy master on top of a sage, would be pretty damn focused on making sure his apprentice was prepared to face the Akatsuki, when not if they come for him. Unfortunately for Naruto, the man wasted the first year of their trip on teaching Naruto basics that should have been done by the Genin's primary sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Necessary time was spent on teaching Naruto how to combat Jinjutsu, how to improve his chakra control, and how to fight more fluidly instead of bullheading into a battle with nothing but wild swings and mobs of shadow clones. While that could put the first year into better perspective for supporting Jiraiya, that time would have and should have been chump change if it weren't for the man's practically obsessive need to peep on women and write in his notebook whenever he got the opportunity. It was bad enough that he even flat out ditched Naruto in the middle of their lessons when there was a chance of spying on women. Naruto, having been around perverted instructors for practically his entire career as a ninja, felt that the Toad Sage was the worst of the bunch. Iruka was classified as a closet pervert, being respectable and actually a very nice guy in public, but secretly having perverted thoughts in his head. Kakashi was a more open pervert, blatantly reading erotica in public and unabashedly giving more visually appealing women more attention. Jiraiya was practically a predator, in Naruto's opinion. Unashamedly peeping on women in locations where they should feel safe like the bathhouses or natural springs or even hotel rooms. It didn't matter in the slightest to him because nothing was more important to Jiraiya than the inspiration for the next volume of his erotica series. Not even training his apprentice, and that title is used very loosely, was as important to the man as peeping. And that made Naruto fucking pissed off. The whole fucking year wasted on basics when they could have done them in a fraction of the time. And, of course, the so-called master ditched his apprentice to peep on beachgoers. So, here he was, almost storming down the shoreline in hopes of finding something to vent his frustrations on. He hoped to find a part of the beach away from the people hoping to enjoy themselves. He didn't want to drag them into his problems when they had nothing to do with them. He was pissed off, not an asshole. But, despite how far he had already trekked, there was no end to the beachgoers. He supposed that should have been obvious since it was a day with gorgeous weather, and this port town was famous for bringing in tourists hoping to enjoy the ocean. Sighing in frustrated defeat, Naruto moved up the beach to where it just barely started meeting grassland and sat down to stare at the waves on the horizon. With nothing to do other than keep practicing basics, his mind was free to think about things he usually preferred to mentally bury. These thoughts centered around how he was always dealt the shittiest hands in his life and how nobody seemed genuinely willing to give him a chance other than out of some sense of duty or orders from higher-ups. Iruka may have been nice to him on occasion, but that wasn't always the case. The man even admitted to it on the night Naruto foolishly listened to Mizuki and stole the forbidden scroll. He confessed, with a massive shuriken lodged into his back, that he originally hated Naruto like most of the village did because he was a living reminder of the Kyuubi. He may have turned around, but he was still harsher on him than others. Kakashi flat out sucked as a sensei. Teamwork drills and the beginnings of the tree walking exercise. All he gave Team 7 that day was a demonstration and a smidgen of advice before he left. He may have been recovering, but teaching a team of genin basic chakra control on a mission with a dangerous missing ninja was fucking stupid. Naruto beat Haku on that bridge because he tapped into the power of the Kyuubi for the first time. There's no other way he would have won against someone as skilled and efficient as the androgynous young man. Haku had him and Sasuke dead to rights, and they honestly should have died that day. Hell, all of Team 7 should have died that day. Naruto still remembered how exhausted Kakashi was when Geto pulled his double cross on Zabuza and came with a veritable army of mercs. If Zabuza hadn't taken down so many, including Geto, and if Naruto hadn't survived against Haku, the supposed elite Jonin would have been dead, with Tazuna and Sakura being killed or worse not long after. However, Jiraiya was probably the worst of the bunch. Throwing complicated techniques at Naruto and simply expecting the genin, who had records showing his lack of knowledge, to figure it out. And even then, all the man wanted Naruto to do during that month training for the Chunin exams was to tap into the Kyuubi's chakra once again. Once more, Naruto knows he shouldn't have lived that day. The Kyuubi had no reason to parent, as the Uzumaki so eloquently put it. The Biju will reform after a few years whenever they die. Gaara told him so when the Tujinchi talked during Naruto's recovery from his fight against Sasuke. He should have died in that chasm, but the Kyuubi saved his ass by supplying him with chakra. Why? Naruto had no clue, but he knew that he owed his life to the Biju 2 times over, 3 if he counted the fight against Sasuke. Knowing that the fox was responsible for his survival 3 times over because he wasn't properly prepared infuriated Naruto. Looking back, he shouldn't have entered the Chunin exams at all. As much as he despised admitting it, Sasuke was the only member of Team 7 who was prepared for the exams. "I'm a fucking joke," he grumbled, self-loathing in his voice as he summarized his ninja career, a joke of a ninja who won because he was one lucky Sanuvabitch with shit tons of chakra that he could blow through with reckless abandon. What am I even doing here? Well, the voice of a young woman spoke up, prompting him to turn and see a pretty brunette in a bikini talking to him. "You could come here to enjoy the ocean, to catch some sun, to relax, or..." She held up a pair of red plastic cups, gently wiggling one suggestively before offering it to him. "You could come with me and hang out with a bunch of us enjoying a beach concert down over there," she suggested, pointing to a group performing on a stage for a crowd of beachgoers. What intrigued Naruto was how inhuman the group looked. The performers looked nothing short of demonic, and the security on the beach in front of the stage was an anthropomorphic wolf-like creature with plenty of muscle to him. "I know that people are aware of the crazy kind of shit ninja can pull off, but I would think a music group of demonic-looking people would be pretty intimidating even to them," he mused. "I wonder if these people are escaped curse mark victims of Orochimaru." He was delving deeper into his thoughts before the offered red cup was once again held in front of his face, breaking him from them. "Come on," the girl egged on. "You look like you could use something to help you unwind, and a concert is a great place for that." She smiled when he awkwardly accepted the offered cup. "Have a drink, dance a little, and just enjoy yourself. You'd be surprised how much it helps." A sincere offer made him smile faintly with a brief chuckle. "Thanks, but I think I'll just watch from here. Any other time, I probably would have taken you up on the offer, but I'd really just like to be alone right now." Despite being turned down, she still kept her smile and nodded sympathetically. "I can understand that. Sometimes, it's just one of those days that really fucks you over." "Try a near lifetime of those kinds of days," Naruto fired back, holding the cup in both hands and staring at the liquid within. From the smell, it was obviously alcohol, something he was admittedly hesitant to drink. "I'm sorry," she replied with a visible cringe. "No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dumping my problems on you when you're just being nice. Don't let me ruin your fun." Her smile came back and she leaned forward to place a hand on his shoulder. "I know you're a ninja based on that headband you're wearing, but if you're ever in the neighborhood again, hit me up. Okay?" Naruto, never having had any semblance of girls showing interest in him, naturally blushed faintly at her offer. Shyly nodding, he watched her leave with a faint giggle. No doubt she found his embarrassment cute, but he honestly didn't mind. She was pretty and definitely better company than Sakura, who would rather bash his brains in than show him anything that could resemble interest. His gaze turned to the concert, blue eyes zeroing in on the singer of the group. Despite her being a possible curse mark victim, Naruto couldn't fight how his blush deepened at the sight of her. He estimated that she was taller than his current height, but he still had some growing left. She had an hergless figure, hot pink skin, and a barbed tail with a black tip. Her head was framed by 2 black-tipped horns with the left horn visibly taller than the other. The horns were marked with 2 black stars on each side. Her eyes were hot pink with yellow sclera, and she had a black heart tattooed under her right eye. She had long ombre white hair with pink undertones, from lighter to darker towards the tips, and a darker pink streak down the length and across the bangs. There was also a red heart-shaped tattoo on her right upper arm, which had a name faintly written within it that had been crossed out with a big black X. Her hair matched her accessorized pink fur coat, under which she wore a tightly fitted white and black mini dress. The dress featured a prominently contrasting X and O pattern on her very developed chest, as well as a star design on the abdomen. For leggings, she wore long black thigh-highs with black high heels that had a heart motif and 3 X-shaped cutouts down the sides, revealing her skin beneath. Finishing her look was a pair of round shades with pink heart designs in the lenses that were pushed up and allowed her eyes to be visible. She must have known he was watching her, for she looked his way while singing. He swore her eyes glowed faintly when she smirked at him and sent him a flirty wink. The earlier blush that had faded returned with a vengeance, and he distracted himself by taking a drink of the alcohol that had been given to him. Immediately, he made a face at the taste that hit his tongue. He would never understand why people enjoyed stuff like this, especially Tsunade, who seemed to guzzle it down like dying woman in need of water. He sighed at that, finding that he couldn't enjoy himself with his earlier thoughts dampening his already soured mood. So, one could excuse his surprise when he looked up from his cup and saw what could only be described as a massive orgy happening on the beach in front of the stage, one that didn't seem to bother the music group in the slightest. Worried about something in the alcohol, Naruto numbly reached out his arm with the cup in hand and slowly dumped it on the beach, all while being unable to look away from the shocking scene down below. Having only been around perverted men and their tame vices, save for Jiraiya's predatory peeping, Naruto had zero experience witnessing anything on the level of perversion as what was happening before his eyes. It's either something in the drinks or this group are doing something to make those people do that, he mused, shaking away his shock for a frown. I better do some investigating. They may be using some sort of genjutsu based around music, like that red-headed girl we fought while chasing after Sasuke. Standing up, he placed his hands in his pockets and turned around. Making it look like he was leaving, Naruto only walked far enough to leave their viewpoint before he circled around to sneak backstage from behind the stage. All he had to do was wait for the cover of night. Unknown to him, the leader of the group frowned at his departure as she stopped singing and watched the humans continue to fuck one another in their massive orgy. Feeling her strength growing from the sexual energy resonating from them, she was curious why the cute blonde watching her was unaffected by her hypnotic power. What's up, boss? Vortex, her loyal hellhound, asked in concern. She hummed to herself for a moment before smirking confidently. I believe we may have caught the suspicion of a young ninja, Tex. He frowned at that. You want me to ambush him? No, she shot down with a wave of her hand. I'll do it. It's not every day that I see someone who can resist my abilities, let alone completely ignore them. I want to see him up close and personal. Vortex nodded before he went to inform the others what she was planning. Her smirk grew as excitement built up within her. Verosika Mayday rarely had any sort of challenge. And she would meet that challenge and milk the rewards dry. She shivered in anticipation. Naruto crept up behind the concert venue's stage. His heightened hearing could still pick up the faint sounds of the orgy going on, and he wondered if any other beachgoers were aware of what was happening on their shores. Or any authorities for that matter like town police. I hope I know what I'm doing, he thought with slight worry as he leapt quietly onto one of the rafters holding stage lights, staying in the shadows like a ninja should. Even if Naruto was questioning his own sense of ability or worth lately, he would never doubt his skills in stealth and sabotage, thanks to his early days of pranking the daylights out of the Hidden Leaf and its villagers. He even pranked the Hokage on occasion, and a darker part of his mentality believed he could have even killed the Hokage if he switched the prank from harmlessly fun to unexpectedly deadly. Yeah, that's the kind of thinking that I need right now, the Uzumaki mentally groused, shaking away those darker notions and focusing back on the now as he dropped from the rafters and behind some of the sound equipment. Keeping his senses sharp, he quietly moved backstage towards the room marked with a red heart that had devilish wings, a spaded tail, and horns. No doubt, that was the private room of the singer and leader of the group. The plan, half-beeped as it was, involved Naruto waiting for her in her room so that he could interrogate her or possibly scare her off from ever returning. What his plan didn't account for was for someone trying to get the jump on him or for him to instinctively stop the ambush and whip out some ninja wire before quickly incapacitating his assaulter. His plan also didn't consider that his target would be the one to try ambushing him. He tried to say, honestly at a loss for words as his face erupted in yet another blush. Here was his target, tied up at his feet by Hao on hand, while wearing what he could only describe as sexy underwear he had seen women wear in magazines when he was younger. She looked to him in surprise momentarily before giving him an intrigued smirk with gleaming eyes. Well, NOW, she practically purred out. I wasn't expecting this outcome. Hiding his blush, Naruto tried to look intimidating as he fired back, you jumped a ninja in the dark. What did you expect would happen? Well, normally at this point, your pants would be off, you'd be on my bed, and I'd be. His blush returned tenfold as he cut her off, never mind. She nearly cackled at his embarrassment. By the seven hells, you're too easy, Whisker boy. Despite the situation, Naruto's glare was more of an annoyed pout as he pulled out a kunai and cut her bindings. It was a stupidly rookie mistake, but she honestly reminded him of the more confident women from the red light district he lived nearby in the Hidden Leaf. He still found it rather sad how people who were shoved into the seedier parts of the village were more accepting and supportive of him than some of his fellow ninja. This woman reminded him of those supportive people, oddly enough. She stood up and rubbed where the wire dug slightly into her skin. A bit rough on me, weren't you? He rolled his eyes and stowed away his knife. Is everything you say an innuendo? He paused and then added, and did he really think he could sneak up on me? I'm a ninja, for crying out loud. Not always, she answered calmly before gesturing for him to follow her. Stand down, Tex. We're just going to talk. Naruto was about to follow her before he felt a warm breath exhaling harshly against the back of his head. Looking over his shoulder slightly, he spotted that wolfman from before standing behind him, looking down on him with a sharp eye. Mind your step, human, he growled out, prompting Naruto to raise a brow. You talk like you aren't one. Because we're not, the woman called to him as she stood by her door. Come on, now. I promise, I won't bite unless you want me to. Rolling his eyes and fighting yet another blush, Naruto walked over to her. They aren't human. Are they demons, or something? When the duo entered her room, she offered him a seat on her couch while she sat at the chair in front of a mirror. Swiveling around to face him, she grinned at him and said, don't mind Vortex. He comes off as a vicious hellhound, but he's not so bad. Right, wait, hellhound? He repeated. They're pretty low on the demonic food chain of hell, like imps. Most are treated as little more than servants, but I couldn't do that to Tex. He's pulled me out of a few tight spots on his own. Hell? Wait, what are you? Demons? Outing playfully, she teased, you mean you haven't figured it out? Not so good at espionage, are you, ninja boy? Even though he knew she wasn't serious about her comment, Naruto couldn't help a slight flinch. His doubts from earlier reared their ugly heads, much to his own chagrin. Verosika noticed this, and another interested gleam entered her eye. Oh. Is ninja boy having some doubts? If she heard him try to say, noticing him avoiding her gaze. If you really are some type of demon, then you'd be some sort of a succubus, right? Oh, he blushing so adorable she mentally cooed before answering verbally, correct. I'm sure that explains the fuckfest happening out there to you now, yes. Having read that succubi were sexual-based demons, Naruto nodded. Yeah, no offense, but I thought demons stayed in hell. How are you all? Back up top. She finished, earning another nod from him. Certain demons earn special privileges when they reach particular levels of power or authority. Hell isn't just a place for the damned, ninja boy. Okay, let's stop there for a sec. My name's Naruto Uzumaki. I'd rather be called by my name than that. She chuckled at that. Verosika Mayday, she introduced. To her surprise, Naruto offered his hand to her and replied, nice to meet you. Staring at his hand, she slowly reached out her own and shook it. You're a pretty accepting human, aren't you? Most humans look down on us demons, or outright fear us. Yeah, well, let's just say I have been on the receiving end of disdain and fear plenty of times. Oh? Mind if I ask why? I'd rather not say right now. There's a story here, Verosika mused, her intrigue storing this information in the back of her mind. Fair enough. Now, back to what I was saying. Hell is the home of many different demons, and we have our own hierarchy system complete with royalty. There are 7 rings in hell, with each ring being named after one of the deadliest sins. The lowest demons and those who are sent to hell upon death reside at the top, the Pride Ring, while Lucifer and his family live at the bottom. And the other 5 are filled with all sorts of different demons, I'm guessing. Yep. Why tell me all of this? I mean, it's interesting and all, but why? Isn't me knowing a risk to whatever it is you guys are doing? What we're doing is simply introducing lust and temptation to the masses. Don't worry so much. He aimed a dry look at her, which she found amusingly cute. Plus, it's nice to simply talk with a human instead of send them into a sexual frenzy. You're one of the rare few that have completely ignored my power, and that's got me very interested. The look in her eyes made him feel like a small rodent in the face of a large cat. He swallowed thickly while his cheeks reddened as she got to her feet and sauntered over to him. Trying to back away, he only sunk deeper into the surprisingly plush couch before freezing when she straddled him on his lap. The redness in his cheeks grew brighter as she rested a palm against his cheek and rubbed his whiskers. What interesting birthmarks, she mused with a smirk. They're both roguish and cute. Did you have to call them cute? He couldn't help asking in annoyance, making her laugh. You're more fun than I thought you'd be. How would you like to come with us? That stopped him short. With you? That's right. You look like you need to get away from everything for a while, and I'm not sure I want to let you go just yet, she answered, hooking a finger beneath his chin so that she could have him look her in the eyes. It's been a while since I've had someone to play with. Is that all I am? He asked lowly, and she knew she was touching on a nerve. Is that such a bad thing? Is playing with me so horrible? She fired back. Maybe, considering I've been played with most of my life. She dropped her smirk at that, looking into those deep cerulean eyes of his. They were gorgeous to her, displaying an almost glow that ironically nearly enraptured her. However, within those deep blues was a pain that tried to remain hidden and a solemn acceptance for what may come. Backing off from him, she got up from his lap and moved to her hanging clothes to look for something to wear. Think about my offer, ninja boy. We'll be here for a couple more days before leaving. Surprised that he was allowed to leave, Naruto got off the couch and headed for the door. When his hand grasped it, he paused for a moment before looking to her over his shoulder. "I'll think it over," he promised softly before departing. Verosika made no showing that she heard him, and she didn't react when Vortex came in not long after Naruto left. "You let him go?" he asked curiously. "I've never done that before," she confessed. "But there was something about him. Something in his eyes that made me back off." "So, what now?" "I offered him the chance to come with us." The brow rose at that. A human joining a bunch of sexual demons. "Is that so far-fetched, Tex?" she questioned. "It is when you could have easily had them fall under your control." "He can't fall under, though. Somehow, he's immune to my charm." That surprised the hellhound. "Immune? There's more to Ninja Boy than we think," Verosika stated as she turned to her most trusted member of her posse with a delighted smirk on her face. "And I want to see just how much more." Naruto sat awake in the middle of the night, ignoring the snores of Jiraiya in the bed next to him. His thoughts were on yesterday, the once more pointless day of training Jiraiya and him had, and the thoughts that had returned from the depths of his heart. He was going nowhere with Jiraiya and his perverted ways, and now he's offered a spot with a group that is more perverted than the Toad Sage. The answer should have been obvious, right? He should just ignore the offer and stay with his master. Right? A sigh escaped him as he hugged his knees to his chest. "What do I do?" "You stop moping, for starters." He blinked once before thinking, "Why are you talking to me, Kyuubi? Gonna give me some advice?" "I just did, whelp. Now, you've made yourself aware of just how weak you truly are without me. 4 times, you would have died without my aid. And that doesn't count the various other times you used my chakra for non-life-threatening moments like your fight against that Hyuga brat. 4. You know of the fight against that ice-style user, of when you were plummeting to your death, and when you fought that bastard Uchiha you so stupidly called your friend. Yet, you've forgotten that time in the snow when you had that device strapped to you that locked away your chakra. That's right. The fight with Dodo in the land of snow when he knocked me into the ocean. Exactly. Why remind me of another time that I owed my survival to you? I already know I owe you 3, now 4, times over. I remind you because I have stake in what you decide to do with your life. Consider this, boy. You know that your time with that wart-riddled human is being squandered, and your time when you face the Akatsuki is coming closer and closer. Will you continue to foolishly waste time you need, or will you take a gamble on that temptress demon and her group? Wouldn't I be abandoning the village? Is loyalty to them worth more than you've already paid?" That sounded oddly comforting, and it came from you. "You aren't the first Uzumaki I've been placed into, boy. My previous host was someone very close to you, but her identity has been hidden from you by everyone you've ever trusted with your life. Your Hokage, your sensei, that slug summoner, and the human sleeping beside you all knew her, but not one of them have trusted you with her identity. Who was she? You like to put some stock in keeping promises, boy, so promise me this. If I tell you her identity and just how close she is to you, you will leave with the temptress." "Why?" "You know why." Indeed, he did. As the Kyuubi said, Naruto was going nowhere with Jiraiya's methods. And the man was giving more and more obvious signs that he was going to have Naruto practice with the Kyuubi's chakra. And there was no way the Biju would be okay with that. "No, I wouldn't," the fox assured him. "What could I learn while traveling around with demons? You'd be surprised what you could learn from them. Chakra isn't the only power in this world, boy. You need to keep your mind open to the possibilities out there. I go with them and you tell me about the woman everyone else is keeping secret from me?" "Yes. Then I promise." "Good. Your mother was my previous host." Naruto's eyes widened in shock. "She was another Uzumaki by the name of Kushina, whom I was given to by the mate of your first Hokage, Mito Uzumaki. You have carried a legacy since the night of your birth when I was ripped away from Kushina and her mate sealed me into you." "Wait a minute, her mate sealed you? But didn't the..." He froze realization, not wanting to believe what it implied. "Don't look away from the truth like you've done countless times, boy." The Kyuubi snarled at him. "You live a life of denial and that makes you weak. And I will not have a weak host. You are the spawn of Kushina Uzumaki and your precious 4th Hokage." Naruto gagged at that, the shock of the reveal shaking him to his core. The 4th Hokage. The one who sealed away the Kyuubi. The man who damned him to the life of Jinchuriki. He was Naruto's father and also your student, he growled out in realization, glaring at the sleeping form of the Toad Sage. "You knew you had to have known, you fucking bastard." Naruto had never been more tempted to kill someone than this moment. Even now, his hand twitched for his holster holding his kunai, but he clenched that hand closed and popped the knuckles in restrained fury. "Kyuubi, is there a safe way to release you?" "Not to my knowledge. But perhaps there are some in hell who know a method. I'll take my chances," then he swore before he quietly gathered his belongings and stepped outside. Getting to the roof of the hotel they had been staying at, Naruto bit his thumb and performed the summoning jutsu, bringing out a large toad that was holding a scroll. Naruto greeted politely, earning a curious look from the non-speaking toad. I need a huge favor from you, my last favor from the toad summons. Looked concerned before motioning the Uzumaki to continue. Whoever's in charge of that scroll, Naruto pointed to the scroll in question, I want them to remove my name from the contract. Croaked as if to ask why. Things aren't working out with Jiraiya, and I need to get away from him and the leaf for a while. Please, have them remove my name. Saw the desperate look in the teen's eyes and nodded sadly. Reaching forward, he placed a webbed hand on Naruto's shoulder and nodded in farewell before vanishing a burst of smoke. With nothing left to do, Naruto headed back for the beach. I'll try to make you proud, Mom, he muttered to himself, hoping that his decision to leave would be something she would support. Had returned to Mount Mamboku after hearing Naruto's request. With a heavy heart he made his way to the great sages of the Toad clan. Approaching some rather diminutive toads, Gamma bowed to them respectfully before setting down the contract scroll of the toads. Fukasaku and Shima, also known as Pa and Mat-Ode, looked to Gamma curiously before watching him roll open the scroll, point to Naruto's name, and make a cutting motion with his forelimb. Young Naruto wishes to remove himself from the contract. Pa questioned in surprise. What would make him want to do such a thing? Ma asked, looking concerned at the notion. Grumbled to himself in thought for a moment before coming to a decision. Gamma, take me to the boy. Let me speak to him personally, see what's happened that made him come to this decision. Gamma nodded as Pa jumped onto his back and the duo vanished into smoke after Gamma pressed his hand on Naruto's name. Naruto had just approached the edge of the beach when a plume of smoke erupted right before him. He was curious at seeing Gamma returning with an elderly-looking toad sitting on his head. Gamma? He asked. You must be young Naruto, Pa guessed with a smile. My name is Fukasaku, but everyone just calls me Pa. You, my boy, look so much like your father. Naruto frowned at that. Yeah, so glad to know that. Rose a brow at the bitterness in the Uzumaki's tone. I've been told you wish to remove yourself from the contract with us. Tell me, before we do so, why are you requesting such a thing of us? You have my word as one of the great sages of the Toad clan that what you say will stay between us and my wife, the other great sage. Naruto's frown remained as he considered if he should even answer. After a few moments, he sighed as his shoulders sagged. It was Pa Toad's turn to frown, seeing how the blonde teen before him seemed to have an invisible weight upon his shoulders. It's a long story, Pa. I've got time, my boy. Tell me what's happened. I don't know where to start though. My childhood memories. When I became a genin. When I met Jiraiya. This trip. Jumped from Gamma's head to the ground before Naruto. Gesturing for the teen to sit, he replied, tell me everything. And so, one of the great Toad sages was told the tale of Naruto from the star himself. Verosika sat on the edge of her stage, enjoying her Beelzebub as she looked at the starry sky, something that hell didn't have, and something she was envious of. These humans don't realize what they have until they're sent to hell. I almost pity them, she mused, taking another drink from her flask. To her pleasant surprise, a familiar voice spoke up from behind her. I'm not too late, am I? She turned around with a pleased smirk at the sight of Naruto without his headband and carrying a rucksack. No, you're just in time, ninja boy. Her smirk fell for a confused look. What's with the geezer-looking toad? Huffed at that from Naruto's head. At least she didn't mistake me for a frog. This is Pa Toad. He's an elder of the Toad clan, and he promised to teach me something after he establishes the waypoint Naruto-chan, Pa supplied. Yeah, that. He needs a marker in hell, or else he can't summon me for training. Verosika made a thinking face at that. How long will this training be? Naruto-chan needs more time to grow physically before I can start my more advanced training, Pa answered. However, I can still teach him other things during his time traveling with you. You seem pretty relaxed being around a demon, geezer toad. And for hearing that I'm taking Ninja Boy with me to hell. Smirked. Going to and from hell isn't the strangest thing I've seen in all my years, girly. Besides, it's high time that this young man, he gently patted Naruto's head, was trained properly for what may come. Verosika rose a brow at that, knowing there was a story involved. Shrugging, she replied, whatever. We'll be leaving soon. Ready when you are, V, Naruto said. V? You call me Ninja Boy, so I figured I could give you a nickname too. She smirked. Hang tight and we'll be ready in a bit. As she left, Pa spoke up, once I set up the waypoint, I'll return to Mount Mamboku and tell Ma what's happened. Don't worry about Jiraiya finding out where you are, my boy. Thanks, Pa. However, we'll be having some words with him about his actions as of late. He was named your godfather by your parents, after all. We were looking forward to him introducing you to us, but he never did. He never did a lot of things, Naruto mumbled. I know, my boy, you've admitted that this is a gamble you're taking. Let's hope that devilish luck of yours will pull through. Yeah, I hope so too. The first thing Naruto noticed about his new surroundings was that the sky was a purplish red and it had intermittent clouds lazily drifting along. It was interesting to Verosika how it was the sky that got his attention before the other demons who were staring at her and her posse. Quite the difference, huh? She asked rhetorically. Yeah, he answered absently, though he looked oddly tense, him and the geezer Toad. Speaking of the Toad, he frowned for a moment before his eyes widened and he clapped his forelimbs together. Boyo. Charge up your chakra as much as you can. He ordered, sounding alarmed. Naruto complied without question, clapping his hands together and surging his chakra. The buildup of raw energy enshrouded Naruto, catching the attention of the nearby demons, who were shocked at the sight of a human with that much power. Now, unleash it as a pulse, boyo. With a grunt of effort, Naruto did just that and released the coiled-up chakra, sending it out like a massive shockwave that echoed for miles upon miles. The azure-colored energy seemed to be fighting a transparent source of power that was a deep black color, sending it away from both human and Toad. Unknown to Naruto, his chakra pulse was felt by all inhabitants of Hell that it swept past. At a corporate-looking building with large horns on the sides, the demons inside were sent reeling at the pulse of energy that swept by them. The three imps were knocked on their asses by the sheer force, while the sole hellhound of the quartet gripped the armrests of the chair that she was on, with her claws tearing into the material. Her outfit featured a spiked black choker. The tattered gray, off-the-shoulder crop top she wore was held up at the neckline by a series of crisscross spaghetti straps that formed an inverted pentagram. For bottoms, she wore shorts that were tattered at the hems, with a crescent moon detail on the right side. The hellhound accessorized with fingerless gloves and black toeless stockings, with her black claws protruding due to her digitigrade stance. Her currently frazzled fur was white with gray encircling her face, gray patches on her shoulders, and long, voluminous silver hair that was swept to the side to reveal her dark gray ears, the right of which was pierced with two small hoop earrings, and the left of which was ragged. Completing her look was a large dark gray bushy tail with white on the underside. Her hackled fur was a result of the shockwave saturating her with its potency. What the fuck was that? The leader of the imps, who was dressed in a somewhat nice coat, shouted in surprise. The other male imp, who was dressed professionally and wore a red bow tie, helped the sole female imp to her feet as he asked, "Are you alright?" She smiled gently at him and pecked his lips. "I'm fine, sweetie." She then noticed how the hellhound was still in shock and moved over to her. "Loona. Loona, can you hear me?" As if remembering how to breathe, Loona gasped for air and struggled to catch her breath as her fur slowly smoothed itself back. "What the fuck just happened?" She gasped out. "We don't know, Moxie," the bow tie wearing imp responded. "Maybe a demon issuing out a challenge to one of the demon lords." "Well, does the fucker have to do that here, Blitzo? The O is silent," the imp in charge ranted furiously. "We were in the middle of a goddamn meeting." Millie, the female imp, tried to calm her boss down. "Relax, Blitzo. Nobody was hurt, just shaken up." "Right. Yeah, I'm fine," Moxie agreed before looking to Loona. "How about you?" She hesitated before replying, still a bit freaked, "But I'll be alright. I just want to know who the fuck decided to do a power flex in the middle of the pride ring." While Blitzo grumbled about what he would do to whoever caused the shockwave, the rest of the immediate murder professionals, IMP, retook their seats so that they could resume their company meeting. Further along the route of the chakra pulse, we come across a large burgundy-colored mansion in the pride ring that had a detailed glyph marking the balconies. Seated on the balcony was a tall demoness that looked to be an anthropomorphic owl. She had long hair like feathers that had gray tips and a large gray stripe on her head. Her face had a short pink beak and very long curved eyelashes with gray markings underneath her eyes, which themselves had red sclera with light pupils. For attire, the demoness wore a white dress with puffed sleeves and feather trimmings, along with black accents. She was also seen wearing a crown, and she had painted nails underneath her black gloves. This demoness was Stella, the wife of Stolas, a prince of the Gosha family of Hell. She was currently avoiding said husband, however, not wanting to see his, in her own words, pathetic, imp-sucking face this morning. Recently, Stolas had cheated on her with an imp, of all things, and had done so on their bed, which she had personally destroyed with hellfire. She needed some space before her rightful fury got the best of her. She and Stolas had argued quite a lot lately, and it was obviously having an effect on their daughter, Octavia. Truthfully, Stella didn't like seeing how Octavia was behaving because of their arguments, acting distant and subdued. The worst thing she noticed was how used to the arguing Octavia had become. Stella didn't want to keep fighting, but there wasn't much left to say or do regarding Stolas. She was broken from her thoughts by a veritable wave of energy that swept through the mansion and kept moving without signs of slowing down. The potency of its overwhelming power had a strangely pleasant effect on her. Visibly trying to restrain herself, waves of ecstasy washed over her, and she had a small orgasmic release from the shockwave, leaving her flushed in her seat and breathing. What was that? She thought after calming down. It didn't feel like demonic power, it felt more like life energy. As she tried to figure out what could have caused the energy pulse, Stolas was busy steadying Octavia. He had been able to shrug off the shockwave, but Octavia was struggling to stay standing, since she wasn't used to such things. Easy now, my owlet, he soothed, helping her to a seat at the table. Are you alright? What was that? Octavia asked in shock, her eyes still wide at the lingering feeling. It didn't feel like the power your mom let off. That's because it wasn't, Stolas informed her. What that energy was is more akin to life energy than demonic power or hell magic, but something like that could only have come from either an angel, a cherub, or a human trained in such energies. And the likelihood of any of those beings residing in hell is low. But not impossible, Stella was heard saying as she entered the kitchen. When she noticed Octavia's emotional state, she frowned in concern and moved to her side. Sweetheart, are you alright? Internally, Octavia was relieved to see her parents not arguing, though she wished the reasons for it weren't because she was affected by that odd pulse. I'll be alright, she assured her mother, giving the faintest of smiles to her. Stella smiled back and gently rested her hand on her daughter's cheek for a moment before standing up to regard her husband. Perhaps we should discuss the cause of that pulse in the foyer. Stolas, who was glad to hear her talking and not yelling, nodded in agreement. Turning to Octavia, he advised, try to catch your breath and eat something. We'll be back shortly. Nodding, Octavia replied, I'll be fine, Dad. He smiled at her before joining his wife in the foyer. Hopefully, they could simply discuss possible sources and not bring up further arguments. Very good, boyo, Pa complimented his future pupil. It seems as though the energies of hell were trying to cling to us in our chakra. Being a sage, I was able to detect its corrupted energies. Is that why I felt so on edge? He asked with a frown. Verosika rose a brow at that. You guys felt hell starting to affect you? As a sage, Pa began, I'm in tune with the energies of the world surrounding me. Specifically, the energy of nature itself. However, here in hell, that energy is corrupted in a way thanks to this being the home of demons and sinners. Life and death are part of nature, after all. And Ninja Boy was able to feel it because perhaps he has an instinctive awareness for energies trying to influence or change him, the elder sage suggested. No sense in telling her about the boy's burden. If he feels like informing her, that will be his choice. There's something Geezer Toad ain't sharing, Verosika thought with a frown before outwardly shrugging. Anyway, we better get off the street since Ninja Boy just announced his presence to practically the entire Pride Ring with that pulse of his. I'm impressed that you had so much juice stored up in you, THOUGH. The saucy grin she flashed him let him know she was speaking with an innuendo, and he tried to figure out what she was hinting at before he blushed in realization. His red face made her grin change to a smirk as she led everyone to where she lived in the Pride Ring. At a rather nice-looking apartment complex, she led Naruto and Pa to one of the uppermost floors and explained, I currently own all the rooms on this floor. My friends and I all live on this floor and have our own rooms, but there are still plenty of extra ones. Most of them just have some extra clothes, some booze, and other crap in them, but they're still livable. Go ahead and take your pick, Ninja Boy. Mine is marked by the same symbol as my changing room while we're on tour. So, it's marked by that red heart with succubus features he used before, nodding in both understanding and thanks. He then started strolling down the hall in search of a room, leaving Verosika and Vortex standing together while the rest of her posse disbanded for the day. What do you think of him? The sex idol asked her most trusted companion and bodyguard. He's got power, that's for damn sure. Problem is that it feels untamed, almost wild. There's also something incredibly dark mixed with it. Almost like the kid's got wrath mixing in. Wrath? Verosika repeated with a frown. I don't think he's wrathful, though. I said his energy had it, not him. It could be something about the source of his energy that gives off that feeling of wrath, Tex elaborated. She hummed at that, wondering about the enigma that the whiskered blonde was becoming. I'll see what I can figure out. Maybe have a chat with Ninja Boy after he chooses a room. Any ideas about what you'll do when word gets out that we brought a human to hell? You know that it's against the rules. Fuck the rules, Tex. There's something about him that keeps my intrigue hooked. And I'll get to the bottom of it. Just be ready for the backlash, boss, Vortex warned before heading for his room. Ironically, Naruto chose a room that was directly across from Verosika's. The inside had, like she said, some spare clothes in both boxes and hanging on rolling racks. It also had a fully built-in bar that was stocked with plenty of booze, a couch with a small coffee table, and a bedroom with a queen-sized bed. Thankfully, the attached bathroom was stocked with basic essentials. Better than my apartment back home, he muttered as Fukasaku hopped off his shoulder and landed on the bar top. This should work, the elder sage mused as he went through a few hand seals and pressed his forelimb on the bar. A sealing formula was imprinted on the wood of the bar top, the blackness of the formula blending well with the deep brown wood. There we go. That should allow you to summon either myself, Ma, or both of us to this location. Got it, thanks again, Pa. Think nothing of it, boyo. We should have been introduced much earlier than this, and I'm sorry that it took you trying to end your contract with us to get you the help you deserved. He then sighed, looking ashamed about the situation. Your father would be. Ah, no offense to your past relationship, but the less I hear about him, the better. Naruto cut off with a frown. I'd rather not hear about Uraya's precious apprentice. Fukasaku looked further ashamed, but he nodded in understanding. Of course, Naruto. Now, I'd better get going and inform Ma about what's happened. Don't worry, we'll have a nice long chat with Uraya about this. You don't need to do that. I'd rather he not know about any of this. What about Tsunade? Pa offered. Naruto hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should know about what was going on. She had to have known about his parents, especially after she accepted the position of Hokage. Still, she had been an incredible source of support and comfort for him before he left on this training trip. Making a decision, Naruto nodded in agreement. She deserves to know. Very well. If anything should happen, don't hesitate to summon us. We'll get you out of here in an instant. Thanks, Pa. Give my thanks to Ma, too. Smiling, the elder sage nodded before he vanished in a plume of smoke. Sighing after Pa left his room, Naruto exited his new quarters and found a certain succubus leaning against the wall next to her door. She had that inquisitive look in her eyes again. So, you mind telling me what that was about? She asked curiously. It's nothing important. Just Pa setting up that waypoint of his, Naruto replied as he waved her question off before changing the subject. What are we going to do now? Tour of city. Visit your studio. Relax. Verosika flashed Naruto a disarming smile. Oh no, Whiskers. I think it's time we got to know each other, she thought before answering. We'll just relax for now, let you get used to being here. After he nodded, she suggested, hey, let's play 20 questions, get to know each other bit, you know. Naruto thought about it before he agreed to her proposal. Inviting her in, the two took a seat on his couch. Verosika decided to start off simple and asked what his favorite color was. Orange, he answered easily. Yours? Hot pink. Naruto nodded with an amused look. Figured it was. He shared a brief laugh with her and then asked the second question, what's your favorite food? Mine's ramen, specifically, the ramen from Ichiraku's. She thought about the question for a moment before asking, can I say my favorite drink instead? Naruto shrugged and nodded, to which Verosika pulled out a familiar bottle from her cleavage and took a deep swig. Removing the bottle from her lips, she sensually licked a stray drop before it could fall to the floor. The small blush on his face amused her. Beelzebub is unbeatable. Want some? She shook the bottle at Naruto in a similar manner to that girl from the beach. Unlike with the girl, however, Naruto shook his head at Verosika's offering. Thanks, but no. I don't like the burn of alcohol, you know. Shame a ninja boy like you would be amazing at beer pong, Verosika suggested before taking a short swig. She licked another drop before she spotted the fully furnished liquor cabinet and bar that she always demanded in any room she stayed in. Flashing a mischievous smirk Naruto's way, the popstar got off the couch and then walked over to the bar. I rarely get to show off my bartending skills, so wait there a sec, she said with some eagerness in her voice. He lifted a brow at that eagerness before he saw her place 2 glasses, 2 limes, a bottle filled with alcohol, some sugar, and 2 tall silver cups on the island bar. Grabbing a knife, she chopped the ends off both limes, then cut most but not all of the skin off the sides, then cut them in half. Carefully removing the cores, Verosika quickly chopped the 4 halves into even slices before putting half of the newly made slices aside. Placing the first group of limes in one of the silver cups, she then used a measuring spoon to place what Naruto guessed was a tablespoon of sugar on top of the lime. She then grabbed a cylindrical wooden object with a rounded end and used it to muddle the contents of the cup. Filling the cup with ice from the freezer, she then opened the bottle of alcohol and slowly poured an amount in the cup. Verosika then took the other cup, placed it on top of the first, tapping it a few times to ensure the fit was tight. Grabbing the ends of both cups, she raised them near her head and smiled rather beautifully, he'd admit as she shook the cups for 12 seconds, then put them back down and removed the top cup. Pouring out the contents into one of the empty glasses, Verosika repeated the processes to fill up the other glass. Taking a sip from both, she nodded approvingly before returning to the couch and offering one of the glasses to Naruto. "Da," she sang out. "Take a sip, ninja boy." He eyed the glass warily, but then sighed since he was unwilling to refuse the fruit of her labor. Naruto brought the drink to his lips and took a small sip. To his enjoyment, instead of the noxious burn he expected, the pleasantly sweet taste of sugar and citrus dominated his mouth with merely a hint of alcoholic burn. "What is this?" Naruto exclaimed with a small grin, drinking a larger amount. "Iparinha," Verosika answered with a pleased smirk as she too drank from her glass. "You said you didn't like the burn, so I figured I'd introduce you to mixed drinks and beet tails." Softening his grin to a smile, he raised his glass up for her to clink as he replied, "Well, thanks. I still don't get how Granny can drink so much sake, but if it tastes as good as this, I guess I can understand." She laughed at his comment as the two enjoyed some silence and savored their drinks. After they finished, they decided to resume their game of questions. The next 4 questions remained basic until the 7th when Verosika asked who Naruto's first kiss was. Initially she howled with laughter after hearing that it was Sasuke Uchiha, a boy whom Naruto hated. In a form of petty revenge, he asked if there was anything embarrassing that happened to her on stage, to which Verosika instantly admitted one of heels broke. The resulting wardrobe malfunction caused her to slip and fall mouth first onto a dildo decorating the stage. "Wasn't expecting to deep-throat anything that day," was her offhand comment to finish her story, and she smirked at Naruto's light blush. She laughed a bit at the memory as she threw an arm around him, causing his blush to increase at her proximity. Her undoubtedly expensive perfume filled his nostrils with a pleasant scent. Part of her was glad that he could relax around her. It meant that he was more likely to stay with her, and she wasn't planning on letting him leave anytime soon. "Alright, you were a prankster when you were a kid, right? Which was your best one?" asked a succubus with a mischievous grin as she stared down at him. Blush gone as he mirrored her grin, Naruto relayed what he considered his greatest prank. Defacing the Hokage monument. The demoness howled with laughter at his escapade, prompting Naruto to share some of his other pranks, such as when he learned ventriloquism for the sole purpose of making people think inanimate objects were speaking to them. "Holy shit. He actually threw it?" Verosika questioned through giggles, leaning against a blonde Uzumaki. "Yep. Hit someone right on the head with that avocado, too," Naruto answered with a chuckle. A few more seconds of laughing passed before Naruto asked, "Know how to play any instruments?" "A few actually," she answered. "But I prefer singing over playing." For the 11th question, Verosika asked what his type was. His innocence showed when he asked if she meant his blood type. Her laughter told him that wasn't what she meant. "Your type of women, ninja boy," she clarified before a playful smirk crossed her black lips and her eyes turned predatory. "For example. Are you into tits?" She cupped her sizable chest while leaning forward to give him an eyeful of cleavage, and he blushed brightly before she turned and smacked her plump rear end. "Or maybe you're an ass man." Rather than a brick, Naruto could only sputter incoherently at her display, which prompted the succubus to advance her sexy assault. Assuming a pose that distinctly reminded Naruto of Hinata, index fingers pushed together and eyes off to the side, Verosika spoke with a meek, quiet tone. "Maybe you like shy girls, senpai?" suggested the now demure-sounding woman. She even stuttered. Naruto was stunned at the sudden transformation as, once more, Verosika's entire persona seemed to shift. Changing from a Hinata-based one to one more like Sakura, she gave him a disgusted look while cracking her knuckles. "Perhaps you like it when girls verbally tear you apart before stepping on you." Despite the blush that remained, Naruto's flat and unamused expression told her enough to dismiss that idea. However, the pop star had one more trick in her cleavage. Dropping her tough act, Verosika adopted a bewitching smile as her predatory gaze returned. Placing herself in his lap, her chest pressed up against his while her lips stopped a few millimeters away. "Or maybe you want to be chazzed," she whispered sensually. Her gloved hand went to her mouth, where she pulled it off with her teeth while never breaking eye contact as she traced circles on his whiskered cheek. Her voice became like honey as she continued her pursuit, trapping him in a spell. "You want a girl who won't stop her pursuit until..." Both their eyes widened, one pair in horror, while surprise ruled the other. Smirking, Verosika got off him and returned to her seat next to the Uzumaki teen, picking up her glass and taking a long sip. Naruto couldn't even face her with how embarrassed he was. Noticing this, the succubus realized she may have pushed him a bit, just a tiny bit too far. "Well, time to kill his boner and reset the mood," she mused, part of her upset that she couldn't take that erection of his for a spin. Swirling the contents of her glass before drinking, Verosika got a wicked idea before she spoke again. "What if, when Sasuke kissed you, he puked in your mouth?" The effect was as immediate as it was amusing. Naruto cringed in absolute disgust, nose crunched while he gagged and turned pale. A giggle caught his attention and ire as he leveled an annoyed glare at the succubus next to him. "Why the fuck would you put that image in my mind? Got rid of your boner, didn't it?" Verosika fired back with a smug grin. Looking down, Naruto realized he was quite the opposite of hard. Still glaring, Naruto decided to push the moment way down into his subconscious to lock away forever before choosing to resume their activity before something else happened. Can you fly or are those wings for show? He asked, genuinely curious. Yeah, but not for too long, Verosika answered before adding, flying is easier in my other form, but I don't use it all that much. Naruto filed that information away as Verosika asked him something relating to his occupation, receiving a rather boring answer, much to her minor disappointment. Never would she have guessed that ninjas had to do chores for lazy assholes, take written tests, and play a blood sport for the masses. Fucking lame. For question 14, Naruto wanted to know more about her other form. So, in your other form, do you become like a stereotypical I will eat your soul kind of demon? Or is it different? It's nothing extreme like that, she explained. My horns grow, I get taller, my nails get longer and turn razor sharp, and my tail gets longer and whip-like. She went to take a drink but stopped as she remembered something else. Oh, and my boobs, ass, and thighs grow in proportion with my height. Naruto blushed lightly at the mental image. That sounds uncomfortable. Not really, Verosika dismissed while looking mildly annoyed. I'm more pissed about how my clothes always get torn up in the process. His blush grew. Just because I can afford to buy replacements doesn't mean I want to, she griped. Nodding in agreement, Naruto picked up his glass before noticing he was starting to feel a bit different. There was a tingle in his lips and he definitely felt more relaxed. He tried to figure out what was going on with his lips, moving them around in attempt to get rid of the tingle, but to no avail. Verosika, seeing what was happening, laughed at his actions. AWW, it's your first buzz. Cooed the popstar as she ruffled his hair. Internally she was pleased to see the alcohol kick in, since this meant she could ask the question she really wanted to. Depending on his answer, she may cut this game short. Of course, she'd have to choose her words carefully, but she spent enough time formulating her question. Granted, people were more honest with alcohol in their system than out, but being tactful was never a bad idea. Time to find out what you and Geezer Toad were talking about, she thought in growing excitement before she verbally asked, so, out of everyone who's played with you, which one fucked you over the most, ninja boy? Naruto paused at first, asking, why do you want to know something like that? So, he wasn't quite tipsy enough to completely lower his guard. It was a good thing then that she thought ahead. Tell you what, Naruto, she began, slightly surprising him with the use of his name, you reveal a demon of yours, and I'll share one of mine. Deal? Naruto looked at his drink as he considered her offer. No one ever wanted to listen to his sorrows before. He mainly told Pa because he needed to vent, so he didn't exactly count. And while he wasn't quick to share them, he didn't want to let this chance to have someone actually listen slip by. Downing his half-full glass in one go, Naruto turned to the slightly surprised popstar. Alright, but if I tell you this, then I want to know the story behind that tattoo of yours. Verosika stiffened at that, and her face contorted into a scowl before she threw down her glass, then pulled out her Beelzebus. You better have one shitty tale, because I hate talking about that asshole. Naruto chuckled hollowly, the laugh alone assuring her it was far more than shitty. Drinking a bit from her bottle, Verosika gave him her attention as he started, as cliché as it sounds, my life has sucked from day one. He told her about the attack on Konoha that occurred on the night of his birth, which resulted in him having a nine-tailed mass of destruction sealed inside of him by none other than his own father. This one act would shape the opinions of damn near everyone around him. I was thrown out of the orphanage and put into a lonely apartment in the red light district when I was barely out of diapers. I had to learn to do everything myself since nobody wanted anything to do with me, and I'm fairly certain none of them would mind if I just dropped dead. The memories of their scornful words and heated glares, even my time in the Shinobi Academy was affected by this. The teachers sabotaged me, labeling me dead last in nearly everything. Going further, Naruto told her of the shameless pervert who was supposed to be his teacher, but did everything but that. Stopping his rant to breathe, Naruto felt something cold tap his shoulder as Verosika offered him a swig of her liquor. His buzz-fueled anger left him uncaring about the burn, and the shinobi took a mouthful of the stuff, coughing slightly as he pulled it back. That same pervert was also my father's teacher, so there was no way he didn't know who I was, Naruto resumed as he handed her back the bottle. I still can't believe he never bothered to do anything to help me back then. I guess his care died with his precious apprentice, Naruto spat bitterly before turning to a stunned Verosika. Fuck, what thread have I pulled here? She thought, genuinely feeling guilty for getting him drunk enough to rant like this. Then again, my actual sensei barely taught me anything either, favoring Sasuke despite being my father's student. So, I shouldn't be surprised. What I hate the most though is how that bastard is hailed as a fucking hero, while I'm demonized despite losing everything and barely having anyone on my side. I don't know the specifics of that night he sealed the fox into me, but I know he's the reason my life was a shit show. He was silent for a moment, stewing in his anger before looking back to her. That shitty enough? Naruto asked, a bit more venomous than he intended. Verosika didn't seem too affected by his tone, but she hadn't expected that out of him. She remembered the solemn look his eyes had when they first spoke, and learning the reason behind it made her pause. Still, she was a bit surprised to learn they had something in common. "Yes, sounds like life, luck, and people felt like making you airtight," Verosika commented before taking a drink of her alcohol. Naruto wondered what she meant by airtight but decided against asking, figuring it was some type of sexual slang. Spoiler alert. It was. "Alright, I guess it's my turn," the succubus said with a sigh, knowing damn well that her story was pathetic compared to his. And again, heartbreak affected succubi much differently than others. "Before I start, you should know something. When a succubus genuinely falls in love, the emotional connection is much more intense and deeper than the casual flings or sex we have," she started off, tinges of irritation in her voice. "Keep that in mind." Naruto's nod told her to continue. She closed her eyes and breathed in to help prepare herself to pick at the wound again. "To get the obvious shit out of the way, this tattoo has the name of my ex-boyfriend. Blitzo," Verosika started, before telling Naruto that the two had first met as Verosika's music career started to kick off and she felt she needed a bodyguard after a few bastards tried to sneak backstage for a private meet and greet. Her disgusted tone was mirrored by Naruto's disgusted face. "I hired him because he was cheap and seemed to know what he was doing," Verosika explained, remembering the rather professional attire and demeanor that prick had during his interview. As time passed and they interacted, eventually they started dating, which quickly became rather serious. They had moved in together, and despite his many odd quirks, one of which Verosika labeled as a fetish for horses, making Naruto actually chuckle, she found Blitzo to almost be perfect. A total asshole and a bit of a slob, but nobody was totally perfect. "I thought he was the one, and I was hoping that he felt the same as me," Verosika said with her head low, trying hard to keep emotion out of her voice. But she could not stop the memories playing through her head, nor the tears that pricked her eyes. The buzz Naruto felt quickly faded when he noticed this, and he saw the subtle tremble of her shoulders and heard the ever so slight crack in her voice. I asked him if he wanted to get married one night, taking a risk and hoping that he was on my wavelength." Her voice was practically dead as she finished. "He was gone the next day with my car and all my credit cards." Naruto didn't know what to say, and he was unable to try and comfort her before her hand suddenly went to her face as her body shuddered, a small sob come from her. That sob nearly broke his heart. "I know it's pathetic compared to your life, but I just don't understand why." Her slightly muffled voice continued before she moved her hands and turned to him with puffy eyes, her mascara starting to run. Naruto saw the hurt person she tried to hide behind her sassy attitude and carnal nature. The person hurting just as much as he was. "How can something as beautiful as feeling as love hurt so much?" she whispered. He frowned at the question, once again pulling on his reserves of sympathy as he decided to help her. "It's not pathetic, Naruto stated, passing her a nearby napkin to wipe her eyes. She stared at him in slight surprise as he gently wiped away her tears. "You gave someone your heart and they stomped on it and left. I've never been in love, but to be betrayed like that by anyone." Naruto paused, thinking of the Ichiraku and how he would feel if they suddenly shunned him despite the years that he had known them. "I'm sorry for making you relive that pain, I should have asked something else," Naruto apologized as he stood up and bowed his head with an ashamed voice. The pink-skinned demoness couldn't believe his actions. He was accommodating her just because of her emotional state, and his life was more fucked up than her little tragic love story. Verosika realized two things at that moment. Firstly, the kid the man before her was way too selfless for his own good. And secondly, she wanted his body under her own, her emotional state fueling that desire. Motivated by the second, she grabbed the still bowing blonde and laid him facing upwards on the couch as she straddled him and leaned her chest and lips on his, claiming her first kiss with the Uzumaki beneath her. The succubus moaned a little as her held the sides of his head, holding him still as her tongue licked at his teeth. Naruto was frozen in surprise for a few moments, but slowly he responded to her, opening his mouth to allow her access, something which Verosika greedily accepted. She felt his heart pick up the pace beneath her as one hand went around her flank to keep her stable, whereas the other gently held the back of her head. She felt secure in his grasp, enjoying the gentle hold, whereas others focused on her ass and hips or just flipped her on her back to try and take control. Grinding her body against his, Verosika found herself about to give in to the sensations. Fuck the consequences. Despite being inexperienced in kissing, Naruto pleased the succubus with his enthusiasm as they Frenched, following her lead and keeping pace. Sometimes she'd remove her lips but keep their tongues closed, staring into his mesmerized eyes and seeing a hint of something in their cerulean depths before descending back down. It was bliss. Eventually, Verosika pulled away, panting a bit, whereas Naruto looked as if he'd exhausted himself, which was impressive given his near-endless stamina. Wiping her mouth with the back of her gloved wrist, the succubus smiled at him and pecked his lips again before she got off Naruto. I'll consider that my rent for the month, she stated softly, sounding happier. You'll be trained as one of my bodyguards, which means that you and Vortex are partners now. See him when you can, okay? Naruto only nodded as she walked towards the door, watching her hips sway hypnotically as she exited. He laid back down, hand on his jack hammering hard, unable to believe what just happened. Verosika meanwhile stood outside with a hand her lips, relishing in her actions. Fuck, that was hot, she muttered to herself, dropping her hand from her lips to her chest. She still felt her heart racing, and she looked to the closed door over her shoulder with a smile. He had such a fucked up life, but he still tried to cheer me up. What makes you so quick to overlook your problems, ninja boy? Why help me when you need it more than I do? Those questions would eat at her mind for the rest of the night, and come morning, she would be no closer to an answer. A certain Toad Sage was on the verge of freaking out. He had woken up to find his charge missing and sent some shadow clones out to search for him. When they returned with nothing, he decided to use reverse summoning on him. It would shake the already strained relationship he had with his dead apprentice's son, but Jiraiya did not care since he was more concerned about where the brat was. When he attempted the jutsu, it only produced smoke with nothing revealed. Officially freaking out, he was trying to think of an excuse to give Tsunade when two small plumes of smoke exploded before him. And when the smoke cleared, he was concerned to see Fukasaku and Shima appear before him, both elders giving the man stern expressions. Jiraiya, Fukasaku began. It's time for a talk. Can I talk to you later? I'm in the middle of a crisis, here. The Toad Sage tried to say. Clearly, seeing as you've no clue as to the whereabouts of your newest student, Shima spoke up, making the color drain from Jiraiya's face. I can explain, he attempted, before the two elders silenced him with matching glares. No Jiraiya. It's time that we explained what's going to happen and how you will have no part in it, Fukasaku stated firmly. And before you get any ideas, Tsunade is already about to be informed as well. And while you will only receive a minimal explanation, she will be told everything. Swallowing thickly, the Sannin tried to laugh it off and asked, everything about what? About your failures as a master towards their apprentice, Shima started. And about your failures as a godfather to Minato's tadpole, Fukasaku finished. It was at this moment Jiraiya knew he fucked up. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.